seats. My name is Drew Harmon. I'm a public information trainee with the Great Basin Team 5. We are talking about the Middle Fort Complex fire today on Friday, September 13th. We will be hearing from incident meteorologists, fire behavior analysts, operations, our agency administrator, deputy forest supervisor, and incident commander. If you could please save your questions until the end, we will have a question and answer session afterwards. So if we could start out with our meteorologist.
Good evening, everyone. This is Nick Nosler, incident meteorologist trainee. I see a few new faces, at least ones that I have not seen. So if you're unfamiliar with incident meteorologists, you're meteorologists that get dispatched to wildfire incidents and provide weather support at the wildfire. Start talking, instead of going straight to the forecast, we'll talk about what we just had happen. We had quite a bit of rain, quarter an inch to almost an inch on the fire, which is really good, and it came in a way that was best for the fire and best for the fuels, which I'm sure Kevin will talk about. It came in multiple rounds. Rainfall rates weren't too heavy or too high, and so it has a little bit more time to soak in that moisture and really help out and not have too many flash flooding incidents or debris flows. So quarter an inch to 9/10 of an inch of rain is what we actually measured on some of the stations, but I wouldn't be surprised if we had a couple spots that were upwards of around an inch. So really good moisture for the fire, and it's going to really help us going forward. Looking at the forecast, we just started the warming and drying trend today, but as you can see, it's not too severe. Temperatures into the 70s, maybe low 80s down here in the Garden Valley, and then starts decreasing again. We have another storm system moving in, possibly two storm systems early to mid next week, and that's going to bring another really good chance of rain. I would say not even a chance. It will rain here Monday and Tuesday, and a really good chance of wetting rain too, which we define as 1/10 of an inch. But if you look down, you can even see the higher probabilities of quarter of an inch or half an inch or more. So we could see a similar rainfall event that we just saw, which would be really good for the fire and really good for the drought around here in the vegetation as well. We're not seeing any significant warm-ups later next week after those rainfall chances, and there's even some cooler temperatures, high RH, and rainfall chances continuing through much of next week. So overall, really good news for fire relief. Thank you.
Thanks, Kevin Meyer, fire behavior and fire behavior analyst. I work closely with Nick. He gives me his expertise on what the weather's going to do, so I can sort of make some calls on what the fire might be doing today, tomorrow, and into the near future. Today, I think the two questions I want to try to answer, or will answer, is what is the fire doing today? So we go to the next slide. I've got a couple of categories here to describe what we call fire behavior. This is our language. This right here is smoldering and creeping. This is where we're at today after the rains. And we came down from, last Sunday, I think ranked 4 and 5, running, and then now we're right here into smoldering and creeping. Smoldering and creeping these are ground fire characteristics. When the fire gets up above the ground, or flame lengths that are more visible and moving, it's running and torching its fires when it's getting up into the canopies of the trees. And crowning is what's happening to put a lot of that smoke up for the fires that we saw around here on Sunday. And this erratic, I can't say for sure, but that's not what we were experiencing around here. You can think of Paradise, California, some of these really extreme events with very high winds and very long-range spotting. So smoldering and creeping is what we have today. We have a little bit of warm-up here tomorrow, but nothing to get us out of this creeping stage. Am I on? I broke the point. Yeah, we're pretty safe to say we're not going to get above the running if we get there tomorrow, which would be some visible flame on the ground. So that's kind of where we're at after these rains. Number two, will this rain put the fire out? That's probably another question you'd like to know. And anything to do with will the fire go out, or it goes into that probabilistic category. So I would say that what we had here was a fire slowing event. So we have categories for that too. We call, you know, a rain like we just had, which was a pretty good one, but a fire slowing event, and then the next stage would be a season ending event. So right now, Nick is predicting, and it looks pretty good. We can trust him that there's going to be some more rain coming on Sunday. We'll have to wait and see if you add two fire slowing events together, you get closer to the season ending event. Kind of probabilistically speaking, October, when you turn into October here, seasonally, you know, you get less daylight, 3 minutes of daylight less per day going forward here through the fall. That drops everything down and makes so that the seasons kind of show by October you're getting a lot slower. Again, it's probabilistic. I can't say for sure, but we're in pretty good shape here. Thanks.
Good evening, everyone. Donovan Walker, Planning Operations Training for Great Basin Team 5. It's good to be with you guys again. Throat's a little scratchy, so bear with me here as we get through this. So I want to start with the map actually, and do the update first, and then we'll jump into that. So one of the really nice things for firefighters when we have a rain event come in, one, it's a chance to take a breath. Two, it provides us a ton of opportunities to mop up and not have to carry around the big, heavy water backpacks because it's on the ground already, which means we can move quicker. We don't have to fill so much back and forth. We're able to really take advantage of that moisture that's been provided for us. And we were able to do that today in a big way. Yesterday, we were slow to engage the fire in the morning. A lot of the roads were fairly muddy. And not really, not really safe to travel in certain parts of the fire. As soon as those conditions allowed us to get back in, we jumped back in with both feet. I want to start on the Bulldog side, on the west side of the fire, and the work that we've been doing. This is a lot of prep work up here that's been going on. Along the Middle Fork, our goal has always been to keep the Bulldog fire, east of that Middle Fork. There's a lot of contingency line that's gone in. We call it using road as line. When we propose it, it's a forest road the way it is, right? When we propose it and we want to use it for a future fire line, that means we're thinning, that means we're using all the different mechanical tools we have, like masticators or clippers. We didn't really use those out here, but a lot of masticating, chainsaws, falling crews going in. When we create all the activity fuels, we bring the chippers in behind that, chip all that down, and really just trying to reduce the probability that a particular road would not be susceptible to fire costs, basically making it where it's favorable for firefighters to engage if we need to. In addition to that, lots of values at risk up around the Silver Creek area, Silver Plunge, going across the top here to Boiling Springs. This is kind of a little box we put around all these values at risk. So working those proposed lines in there, that continues. It's quite a process because you don't just start it and not finish it. You clip it, you cut it, you make it open, and you got to clean it up afterwards. So that's all the work that we continue to do up there. In addition to that, a lot of fuels modification around the identified values at risk in there, and that's the same thing, getting in around where those values are and thinning that out. So if fire does get in there, it's a lower intensity fire that goes through there. It's easy to control with firefighters in the area. We're able to bring the engines in there, use the hoses and the pumps that we have in there, the sprinkler systems, and it really allows us to provide a higher margin of success when it comes time to protect values, especially if fires are impinging within there. It gives us a safe place to work, and it allows us the most time to engage those values at risk when fire's in the area. So this all continues here. There's crews up in there that continue today. We continue to get additional masticating equipment in there to try and make that process quicker. And we do all this because it's not a season-ending event yet, right? As you heard, it's a season-slowing event. Been doing this 30 years. There's a lot of people in this room that have been doing it a lot of years and have seen when you get close close and you think you're there, and Mother Nature has a different surprise for you. The rain doesn't come, it gets dry again. So you got to keep that posture up, and we're going to finish this job in here, and we're going to transition this job to the next group that comes in behind us to make sure that it gets complete and everything is protected. Okay, moving on down. We talked a lot about our indirect line in here. This is around Crouch and Garden Valley, right on the edge of Bulldog and connecting to Nellie. This plan continues to be a plan that's viable. We have crews here that are ready to implement that if needed. We have the resources to call on to bolster our efforts in there. But meanwhile, we need to know what's going on in here. We always talked about the potential of these coming together, and model what exists at the time unless you put those inputs in there. So we're always going to model for worst case scenario, right? What could happen and how do we protect against that? And a lot of the strategies that you've heard in here, we briefed on our last meeting, strategic firing in there, in locating areas of the fire that we can't put firefighters because maybe it's too deep in there, it's too hard to get them out if something happens. It's not a good work environment. So what can we do? We can look at where the fire's going to go, and I think those of you that were here remember me talking about fires and bears are about the only thing that go uphill faster than we can, right? But what we also know is we can intersect those fires at the top of those areas and bring fire back. So when fire does want to run, it doesn't have a place to run. Those fuels have been taken up and we're burning them under more controlled conditions as opposed to letting fire go from the bottom of the slope to the top of the slope. We're going to discuss that in a little bit of what actually happened during that operation last week, and that'll be in a subsequent slide. But we continue to look at those opportunities. Now that it's rained and we have fire up on these ridge tops in a few places in here from that operation, that rain coming in there has hung them up there. So that's a different and a new chance to look at different objectives, or not objectives, but different strategies and different ideas that could be used to maybe make sure everything's up here and we never have to touch this, which would be ideal. But everything's on the table. Moving down. This all remains secure, nothing has changed here. What has changed is from about where the green pointer is here in the very bottom of the Highway 17 corridor, okay, where we're able to get across the Triple Nickel Road here and over to this corner here, about another 1.5 miles is completed line for us. It's in a patrol status. And the idea is we're trying to get to where that entire Highway 17 corridor, that's no longer a concern as far as how intensively we're going through and looking at that every day. So the more black that you see come on the map, that's a good thing, and we have increased that completion by a few percent. Seems like not a lot, but it's a couple miles. It's a lot of work to get there. We plan on using we call it UAS. It's a unmanned aerial systems. It's a drone, okay? And we put the infrared cameras underneath there, and we're able to really take a hard look. We put the boots through, we have people going through, feeling around, looking, and then we're going to come through with IR before we call that next section completed. And so that's the plan, is to keep looking at all of those opportunities to show that it's completed. Moving along on the whole eastern side of Nellie Fire, you see a few areas where it's pooched out. Those are just areas where there were some fuels left over from the Pioneer Fire, and when fire has gotten into those areas, it's burned pretty low intensity in there. We haven't seen anything crazy in there. It burns through some of that at a low intensity, and then it hits those harder areas that were burned in Pioneer, and it doesn't move anymore. That's really the case after the rain that we've had, and looking forward, if we continue to see that, we don't really see a lot of concern in these areas here. Moving to the north. So coming around into the Deadwood Reservoir area, we did a lot of work early on, and the team before us really fighting fire hard around here to protect these values that were in here, getting the line in, getting the mop-up in on the southwest side here. We did have, so our mop-up standards, we're going 200 to 300 feet in from the edge of the fire, really trying to make sure that there's no threats to what we call the line. And those of you that were here before, we talked about just because it shows black line, break. Just because it shows fire line on there doesn't mean it has actual black edge up to that line. It's a lot of the way that these fuels burn. They get in the trees and they throw spot fires everywhere, and those spot fires all grow a little bit. And then we have to go find all of that and make sure that they're secured, they're not spreading, they're mopped up, and it takes a lot of time to do that. So that's still happening up here in this area to reach those mop-up standards to make it safe. Additionally, where people like to recreate that were impacted by those areas, we have to look at the aerial hazards with the snags, the fire burned trees, things that have fallen across roads, get those cleared out, and we continue to do that. That definitely continues to happen there. The last little piece of heat we had right before the rain was up in this corner here, right, this little tip right here. And we were able to, there's a little road system in there, we were able to engage crews in there, get them right to where that heat was, and they work those areas direct. And we don't anticipate seeing this being an issue after the work that they've done. If we can follow that up with some more rain, we'll let that get into the ground, and then we're gonna get the tools back in there again and get that all mopped up, and that's gonna be looking really good. The last thing I want to talk about is the triple nickel work in north towards Deadwood Outfitters to the north. If you want to pull up just a little bit to the north. Up here. So again, this is the road plan design, and this is continuing preparatory. Boy, if I could say that. Prepping the road, we'll just say that. Okay, doing the same masticating, doing the same thinning, making sure that if we need to use that road as a future fire line, that it is in good shape. If this did want to go, we're still keeping it east. The other thing that could benefit with this break in here is if other fires in the area impact around it, it would be in place, and the same benefit it would provide for firefighters and protecting those values at risk. It wouldn't matter which way a fire came from, that protection would be in, and that's the idea, is to get that completed all the way up to that drop point 59, which is up by the Deadwood Outfitters up there. That being said, I want to talk a little bit about the fire area inside of Nellie real quick. So in the burn areas, we have our main travel corridor, which is triple nickel through that all the way from Highway 17. And what we're seeing with the rains is we're getting debris flows in places. That happens when there's steep slopes, drainage systems that go across a road. After it's been burned, there's not a lot of material left if it burns really hot and severe, and it will cause debris flow. So we gotta do our best, and we have been opening those back up, getting equipment in there, making sure that it stays passable, and that's just the kinds of things that happen in burn areas that can impede our travel, our access into certain areas that we're trying to get to work, and it's a challenge that we have to overcome in real time. Okay, let's go ahead and shift gears a little bit. One of the things we wanted to talk about a little bit is fire effects, and the question that we get a lot is in a lot of places is what does it look like on the landscape? What is it all burn? Is it all sticks? Is there anything left? Is there any habitat left? There's always those kinds of questions, and so I just wanted to spend a few minutes and talk about fire effects a little bit. As soon as I get a drink. So this is in the Division Romeo area where this was taken. We had a lot of resource advisors and our fire behavior analysts and division supervisors have been taking some photos and trying to help to put together a little bit of, education on what it does look like. What does this fire in your backyard look like out on the landscape? Division Romeo being on this kind of southwest flank of the Nellie fire right there. And as you can see, there's kind of a mosaic out there. You've got areas that burn hotter, areas that burn cooler. The discoloration of the trees, we call that scorch, and that is an indication of how hot that fire was underneath the canopy. Many of those trees are going to survive just fine. Some of them will not. Fires, one of the ways that forests are thinned naturally over time. There's other ways that they get thin. When they get too overstocked, they get bugs in them and they die that way. Fire is a pretty natural occurrence on a lot of this stuff. And so you do see a variation. Does that mean that it all burns like that? No, there are areas that burn very hot. Everyone saw what happened last week when all the fires around Idaho, it seemed like all blew up at once. And you had these big towering pyrocumulus clouds in the air that were just very impressive to watch, but it's because those were very intense fires happening under pretty intense conditions. And so the next slide, some examples on this fire, on burn severity. Okay, that's going through, whether it's an active crown fire that's intensity on the ground that translates to the crowns and it keeps moving and it takes everything, or what we call an independent crown fire, where fire gets up and when there's enough wind or slope, it moves through the crown, sometimes completely independently of any of the stuff that burns on the ground, and that's a secondary fire that'll come through. But the end result is it tends to burn everything. And when that happens, what we see, we call this high intensity, high severity. Intensity is the energy release, right? How hot is that fire when it's burning? Severity is what is it doing to the resource? What is it doing to the ground? What is it doing to the soil? Is there any growing parts of plants left? And so when you get the high intensity, high severity, it's hard to recover. You get total consumption in a lot of places. Soils get to where all the organic material is kind of burned out of the soils, and so the next time it rains, it tends to beat up and run off, kind of like if you wax your vehicle. It's kind of like that. And that's where we see issues with, flash flooding, mud flows, those kinds of things, because those soils aren't able to handle that in those areas anymore. And it also makes post-fire recovery more difficult. It will recover over time, but it's a time thing, right? So that's what high intensity, high severity means as far as burn severity. Next slide. So more in the middle, the moderate intensity, mixed severity, you're going to have areas that did that to the trees, right? They torched out pockets in there. You got, a lot of the organic material burned out. But right next to it, you're going to have areas that were left intact. A lot of prescribed conditions, like when agencies do prescribed burns or landowners do that, sometimes that's desirable to knock some holes in things. In a wildfire situation, you're going to have areas like this that you're going to get black on the ground pretty much everywhere, and that helps us when we're locating fire lines and things like that. But the idea is it doesn't take everything. You have some areas and trees that are going to be left and some organic material on the ground, but it is the next step down from those really high severity fires. The soils become a little more stable because of the organics that are left. Some of the root systems are still in place in there, helping to hold that soil in. And you have areas intermixed with high and low consumption. Next slide. The last category I'll talk about is, it's moderate intensity to even low intensity and low severity. These are just ground fires. You don't see canopies that are burned. This is just moving through either in the grasses, the shrubs, the brush, the reproduction, trees that are on the bottom. You get a little scorch on the trees. It helps to naturally limb those trees up. That's a natural process. And it really makes stands more resilient to fire in the future. And post-fire recovery is a lot easier because it's able to do it by itself. Soils are generally more stable, again, because you have a lot of material left on the ground. And you don't see this all the time on these big fires, right? But you're going to have places in there that you could see that, whether that's because firefighters have identified values at risk that they want to protect by putting low intensity fire away from it. When we have resource shortages where we can't get all the people or the right equipment in, sometimes that's an option that's looked at in order to meet the need to protect the resource and to make it resilient on its own. And those are things that we can do. Next slide. So what does that look like when we're conducting these firing operations? These are examples of the kind of fire behavior that we can do. This is what the fire was doing on its own. It's backing off a ridge, it's backing down, it's flanking on the sides. It's not allowed to run uphill. It's coming down, it's burning at a mixed severity. And yeah, you can get some hotter stuff, you can get some torching in those areas, but it's not taking everything because the wind's not taking it with it, it's not going up the slope. It's fighting to burn, right? And so we can create those same conditions a lot of times when we're looking at strategic firing, is we're creating those kinds of conditions in the right place at the right time of day with the right people in order to get those kinds of fire effects. Go ahead. I want to invite up Isaac, who briefed on this last week when we were talking about the strategic firing that we did, and he can talk a little bit about the success to that in the next couple of slides.
Good evening, Isaac County, Strategic Operations Leader with Team 5. So last time we all met together, we kind of briefed this option or this strategic action with y'all. So we were able to get up there and do a little bit of firing. When we talked about it, we talked about this ridge top that comes here off the Scott Mountain, as well as this ridge that's running to the east, northeast, to the southwest there. We felt at the time was right with what we had going on in this drainage down here on the north side of the bowl here. We had a lot of heat that was down at the bottom of this drainage. There was several stringers that came up to the top of that. So we did take the UAS and we did put fire here along this ridge. This little slop over that's over here on the south side of the ridge, that was there prior to us doing that burn. And that's really what we were trying to mitigate, is any of that happening in there. So we were real successful. I flew that burn that afternoon, and everything that we lit on the backside was still in place. Nothing came across there. And then we were putting helicopters to work on this. What this does potentially allow us to do down the road is, if we can safely put firefighters in there, we can mitigate those little slops or spots over that ridge. So that was really the intent of that. We didn't take any spots from our burning on that. We also put a little bit of fire up here, what we're calling section 13. And again, that piece also was real successful and stayed where it was supposed to be. Due to the weather, we haven't been able to get an updated IR to really see where that's at. But based on the weather that we've had, we're thinking that fire is where we want it to be right now. And we'll continue to look at those options as we move forward. The other piece that we're looking at is this piece down here. Not necessarily looking at putting any fire on that, but with the weather, it may potentially allow us to put firefighters in here to bring that edge back to the rocky, scabby stuff that's up on the north side of that. They're evaluating that as the days go on, as we can get firefighters up there safely. So as I mentioned before, the severity of that burn, did you have pictures of that?
Just the ones from the next two slides of your test fire and
All right, go ahead and go to the next one. So this was the burn taken. Over here is when they were started what we call the test fire. Basically what we do is we put a little bit of fire on the ground and we allow it to burn for a little while. We're looking at a lot of things when that's happening. Are we meeting our objectives? Low intensity fire, or are we putting too much heat on the ground? So based off this photo and listening to the folks out in the field, they felt that that burn was going to do what we wanted to do. And as you can see with the next, we continue to bring the fire down. Yeah, you can see some heavy fire on the background. However, we have that lower intensity fire up above that, which minimized that fire to be able to run to the top and spot over. So looking at this, we feel that we were very successful, at least to this point. We haven't done any burning since. The conditions just aren't right for that for a while, and based on the weather matrix, it might not be right for a while.
I'm good.
All right, thank you.
That? No pointers. Wow, maybe I need some pointers. You let me know afterwards, okay? So Brian Munner, I'm the agency administrator. What that really means is I kind of work between the team and the forest to make sure we have communications and open communications in both areas. I'm also, just a little bit about myself, I dabble a little bit in cowboy poetry, and when I go on fires, I dabble a little bit in fire poetry. And then lately, I don't know, character building poetry. I don't know what the other morning was, but anyways, I would like to share one of those with you. It kind of tells you, it gives you a little bit of glimpse of a fire camp in the morning. Before I do that, there's one little acronym that is in there I wanted to share with you so it makes a little bit more sense. So in the morning when we do briefing, and you usually can see it if you get up early, you'll see all the lights on in camp, and they got those great big bright ones. All of the crews come around gathered around the map. And they get these papers, this packet of what's called an IAP. It's called Incident Action Plan. Did I say that right? Yeah, nice. Winner. So, when you look at these things, they are pages long. So they have the weather, they have fire behavior, they have all the stuff that a firefighter needs for knowledge. And then as it works towards the back, it has their assignments. And so they'll have a page of, hey, I'm in this division, and I'm assigned this piece of line, and kind of their objectives for the day. So when I say IAP, that's what that's standing for. So this is called Thoughts for Fire Camp. The light begins to chase the night. It's time to strap the boots on tight. The yellow shirt is no longer bright. It shows the wear of every firefight. You've been doing this for several days. It takes a constant effort to fight back the haze. There is hope that the morning briefing won't be too long. There is hope that the breakfast is hot and the coffee is strong. Struggling with the IAP, you finally find the right page. The assignment is given, and it's time to engage. So, just a little thought there of what it kind of feels like sometimes. Kind of what it feels like on a morning in fire camp. But the part I want to kind of talk about a little bit is that last part, time to engage, right? Just for everyone's knowledge, and you can see it because we've already kind of gone over the plan. There may not be a lot of smoke in the air, but these guys are still engaged. This is our break. This is our chance to really shine. So these guys are up there in places we couldn't get into before because it was either too hot or too much risk. Now we can start getting into those locations and we can really get some work done. The other thought I wanted to share with you is just because there's not smoke in the air doesn't mean there's not fire. An example from my district back home, we had what's called the canal fire. And it was one of those little ones out in the flat that we thought we had all taken care of, right? And a 100-year windstorm come through. That fire became one of the state's largest fires, one of the top 5 largest fires, just because there's no smoke. We thought we checked everything, and then we walked away, right? And so that wind kicks up. That's all it takes, guys, is if those lines aren't secure and we haven't done a good job that these guys are doing. I mean, you hear him talking about using infrared flights and mopping up with the back of their hands to make sure there's no heat anywhere near the line. Then the next hot day, even after all these rainstorms, we're going to get those smokes coming back up. And you'll see that. You really will till the snow flies. You'll see little pockets that'll put up a little smoke here and a little smoke there. Hopefully all was internal. But we're going to stay engaged until we get this thing tied down. And that's what you'll see. So don't, just because you're not seeing smoke, don't try to chase these guys out of town. They're still engaged. They're still doing that job. So that's all I have for them. Is there any questions?
I have a question here. My name is Vandy Forrester. My name is Vandy Forrester. I live in Terrace Lakes. Terrace Lakes is a sort of a suburb, mainly known for Terrace Lakes Lodge and Restaurant and golf course. Now, I'm not well versed on reading maps. Can you tell me if there is any danger of any fire up on the maps that you can read, whether or not Terrace Lakes is any danger of getting burned up? Okay.
I might have to look at my folks. Do you know where Terrace Lakes is?
I doubt if the fire will burn up anybody playing golf at the moment. However, there are several hundred people confined in what is called Terrace Lakes.
It's about 8 miles.
It's north of Crouch.
4 miles.
Okay, it's the
And,
best.
and we live there, my wife and I live there, and we want to know, are we going to burn up our house anytime soon? I'm not kidding.
No, I'm with you. So, if we had felt that way, we would have had you guys evacuated out. So I'm gonna go, that's the best answer I got for you is, since we haven't evacuated you, I'm gonna say you're good for now, right? Like I said, we've got some great rains. We've not, the fire kind of has lost its umph, and so, but I would never call it out until it is out. But since we haven't evacuated, I'm gonna say, no, you're good where you're at, so. Yep.
Before I shut up, I want to congratulate you, all of you firefighters, for what you have done so far to protect us in this area and what you will do in the future. When I was a little boy, I always wanted to be a fireman and get on that lead truck and go wheeling down the streets with the firemen. Always wanted to be a fireman. Never turned out that way. I never became a fireman. But it's been nice to be in this room with a whole bunch of them. Thank you very much.
We're going to do some more questions. I jumped the gun. I'm a rookie, I guess. So we're going to have more questions at the end, but we have a couple more speakers, so I'm going to
hand it off to David Frank to talk to you guys, and then we'll get into questions in just a second.
Yeah, good evening, everyone. David Frankham. I'm the Deputy Forest Supervisor on the Boise National Forest, so I work locally here. Some of you might remember me from early on this incident. I was the agency administrator with one of the first teams here, where we met over in the community hall there in Crouch, and about 160 people that evening. So there was a lot of people engaged, and I do want to thank all of you for your continued engagement and your interest in the work that this Great Basin Team 5 is currently doing, and also acknowledge, right, it's been a long summer. Like I mentioned, I was here a month and a half ago. We're still rotating through agency administrators and these incident management teams, and you guys don't get a break, right? We send these teams away after 2 weeks. I can go take a break, come back, re-engage, but all of you have been stuck with the fires for the entire summer, along with all the smoke. And I'm sure you're starting to feel some incident fatigue, and that goes the same for our cooperators, right? Scott Turner and our local fire chief and everyone else. And just want to acknowledge you guys are probably feeling a bit exhausted, and hopefully, like Brian said, we're turning the corner and maybe we're going in a different direction here and starting to move towards wrapping these incidents up. And I wanted to thank Trent and Gwen and Great Basin Team 5 in front of all you. They're doing an outstanding job for the Boise National Forest, helping us out here, and appreciate all the teams that have cycled through your community this summer. And again, if you want to talk to me about anything regarding the Boise National Forest, I'll be available after the meeting here. Feel free to come up and talk to me. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Good to see you guys. I missed you Wednesday. Sorry we had to cancel it, but you know, with the predicted rain and we did have lightning and stuff, we just didn't want you guys to have to get out in it. So apologies for that. But you know, I've been honest with you guys from day one, and I can honestly say I don't miss every public meeting, but I honestly do miss you guys. Y'all have been a great group. So yeah, thank you guys. So Terrace Lakes, I drove by it today, right across the road pretty much, and you're completely safe right now. I slowed down, I almost turned to go in there because the entrance has got the sign, right? And I said, man, I want to go see what's in there. I didn't, but now I kind of want to. So I'm probably going to take a drive through there to see. But right now, you know, especially we were feeling pretty confident before, but now after the rain, we're really confident. And then you saw the weather, we're going to get more rain coming Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. We're going to be even more confident. So no worries. If anything changes, you'll be the first one we see. Okay, we'll let you.
Don't play golf while you're there.
Don't tempt me. So with that, you heard where we're at operational. Yeah, it's just been a pleasure. All the out in the public, all you guys have been great. So many thank yous. The firefighters have been so taken care of. The gratitude, the respect, the thank yous have just been great. So I give you my sincere appreciation for everything you've done and your support for us being here, during this time of your burden with this fire. So we do have our marching orders. So this last team day will be Tuesday of next week. And y'all remember Tony DeMasters, who worked on this for us for forever, 20, 30 years. His team is actually coming to replace us. So they'll start rolling in Monday or so, and they'll shadow us Tuesday, and then they'll take over. So you're in good hands with the local Great Basin team. So yeah, I'm excited that you're getting a great team to come in behind us. So I'm feeling really good about that. So with that said, I know you guys have been sitting here a minute. We will definitely open it up for questions now, right? Not to jump the gun, but Drew.
Yeah, do we have any questions in the audience?
Steve Mason, I live up on Scrabble Creek, and I get it. You guys are working your tails off for us, and we appreciate it. We really do. But I have a concern. Winter's coming on. Scrabble Creek is closed to traffic. We need to get up in that area, get our firewood and our winter meat. And I was just curious to see how long that's going to be closed. We could have closed 6 Mile and Fire Ridge Road down to Boiling Springs and Middleport. Instead, you closed the only line up to the top. I was just wondering what was going on with that. Is it going to be open anytime soon?
Yeah, appreciate the question, and we were just talking, myself and Brian, when I came down here this evening, or up here this evening, and we're taking a look at the closures. Just for some context, right across the Boise National Forest is about 2.3 million acres total, and we have about 1 million acres of our forest closed right now, so it's a big percentage of our forest that's closed because of these fires. But we are talking about potentially starting to take a look at some of these closures and shrinking them down so we get access in there for hunting as well as firewood cutting. I'm not going to make any commitment at this time, but we started those conversations, and we'll definitely communicate that through the teams and these public meetings if that's the case here.
I was going to ask if the fire is abated a little more going into those old burns, if that has affected it and the fuels are down in there. The other thing I wondered about was on the Bulldog and Nelly fire, about what intensity did that burn? You talked about low to moderate, and that was most of that ground fire in there. And then the other thing I was going to tell you is that if you plan on playing golf there at Terrace Lakes, bring hot balls. The way they keep score there is if you lose 8 balls, if you find 6, you're 2-1.
To answer maybe one of your questions, and I might grab one of the fire behavior analysts too that gets around a lot out there. I was able to take a flight myself and see a lot of it, not the whole fire, but a lot of it. You're steep. So where's that pointer at? Didn't look familiar. A lot of the country that burned in Nelly here was exactly between 2 burn scars where the fuels were still there. They were still the older fuels, much older fuels. Those areas will always tend to burn hotter, right? in your burn scars and stuff. Some of this poked into reproduction in a burn scar here, where the pines start coming back in. They're really thick, but they're not really tall. Those kinds of things. Steep slopes that are stocked really heavy with fuels, with lots of trees, lots of dead and down. If those are in alignment with the conditions that day, those kinds of slopes, they're fires moving from the bottom to the top, those burn pretty severe, okay? When it goes over the other side of the hill and starts coming down, those tend to be less severe. So you think about that over a landscape, right? It's gonna vary. It's not 100% moonscape. That very first picture in the slideshow that I had, that was the best landscape shot I could find that showed, like, you know, thousands and thousands of acres out there, and you could see that it wasn't 100% burned out. There are definitely areas within there that did that. Some of those, like I said, do impact areas where people go, roads, things that have to be addressed. You know, as we move through time in the forest, starts working their way through all of the post-fire stuff. That's a real thing, but it's certainly not the whole fire by any means. I think there's a lot of places along the Middle Fork looking into Bulldog. It's a lot. I would say a lot of it looks like it was a prescribed fire. It was a lot of different varying fire effects, backing, flanking fires, not all head fires. Part of the reason for those slides that we were showing, there's other things that we could have shown big flames and stuff like that. Head fires, crown fires, the things that the fire behavior analyst was talking about in that chart. All of that exists at different places across the landscape at different times. And what our job is to try and really minimize those, fire size, first of all, right? No one wants the fire to be bigger than it has to be. But in order to do that, sometimes it means being very strategic around there and helping it to go to areas like old burn scars, so you could take a big bite out of, a portion of the fire. It goes there, it's gonna go into that, it's gonna probably do some good cleaning some stuff up in there. But I would say very mixed severity in there. There are areas of high, there's areas that are hardly burned at all, so it is a mix.
Any other questions?
Yes, first of all, I'd like to thank you guys. We had a lightning strike on Wednesday behind our subdivision, and they call it the crossfire. It's cross timber, so it's kind of fitting. But the response was phenomenal. I mean, there were 25 people on that fire, and they got it out real quick, and I just wanted to thank you guys for that. My other question is for the Forest Service. If you would maintain the roads, would that help all these firefighters? I mean, that way they have in and outs into areas. I think that would be just the way to go. That's my question.
Well, roads are always a tricky subject, right? So we have hundreds of thousands of miles of roads on the Boise National Forest, and we have different statuses on those. So some of those are, they're kind of put to bed for a period of time. They're only opened up for like logging operations at a different time. And then we have roads that we maintain for public access, right? So it's a mix. So if you have specific roads in mind, right, we can bring those to the attention of the Forest Service and definitely have a conversation about how they're currently being used or managed. But for this incident, right, a lot of those are oftentimes opened up or they're used for some kind of control line or whatever it might be. So we do look at all those. These teams are well aware, right? They've got folks on the ground taking a look at those and trying to use those as best we can to manage the fire. I don't know if that answers your question or not. But, yeah.
Thank you. First of all, I want to thank everybody. I want to tell you what I really appreciated, besides all the work that the guys are doing out on the lines, is the informational aspect of all of this. The communication really makes a difference. We've enjoyed those interviews at Garden Valley Radio. We really like these community meetings and the morning 5-minute fun stuff from Dawn has been excellent. Friday the 13th was especially good, by the way. And I was wondering if you could tell me the actual Great Basin number for the next group.
Team 2.
Okay. And then I wanted to tell you how cool it was watching the helicopter dipping that monster bucket into, I guess it was the South Fork of the Pay yesterday. It was phenomenal. I was watching it out my back door. Very cool. And then finally, what happens in these burn areas? Do the animals get away or do they all burn up? What happens?
Does anybody want to hit on this one? I'll take a stab at it. So, obviously, I'm not from here. I'm from the southeast, where my main job is prescribed fire. On England Air Force Base, we burn 100,000 acres a year. With that, we burn for threatened and endangered species. So, you know, we might not have elk and some of the same species, but the animals have adapted over time. They've seen fire here before. So, you know, those fires, yeah, they get out of the way. The turtles that we have go in the holes, the snakes go in the holes. Now, I'm not saying it's perfect. There are some fatalities, right? Some don't make it, but probably from the research and all we've done with prescribed fire and all our biologists and all, you know, probably 90% or more escape. And you heard Donovan talk about the fire phase. Now, when that fire goes upslope, it burns 16 times faster. So yeah, some might get caught in those scenarios, but the fire just doesn't do that all the time. It will go up, make a run uphill, and then it'll, you know, do a nice and slow burn. And though you know as well as I do, Mother Nature takes care of the animals, so they have a sense of it before it gets there, right? And they're adjusting, moving, burning down, or whatever the animal is. So yeah, there's I know it looks bad sometimes, but there's not as much wildlife damage as you would think.
Okay, you have a new incident management team coming in next week, so we got a couple of weeks of them. Is there any plans in the future to combine the complex team from West Mountain Complex with the West Fork Complex?
Alright, so, yes. So what we're looking at with the rain, the predicted weather, there's a lot of work to do. You know, there's a lot of rehab, repair. You know, we don't just leave here. Any line that we've created, dozer, mechanical lines, any hand lines that's been put out there, anything due to the fire, we actually have to go. We have our reeds with us, and we have a whole suppression repair plan signed and everything. So we'll go out, we'll put in, turn out some water bars because we don't want erosion. So we'll go out there. So there's a lot of work left to do with fire lines and stuff like that. So the next team that come in, Tony the Masters Team 2, will come in, and it's looking like they're going to take the West Mountain and this fire. So what's going to happen? We're still working out the details. Our last shift will be Tuesday, or they'll shadow us Tuesday, and they'll take this Middle Fork complex Wednesday morning. It will be under their command. And then probably, I'm not sure, so we're still finalizing. I don't know if they're going to transition with the West Mountain the same day as us or the next day. It might be staggered, but ultimately they will take all the fires as far as the West Mountain complex and the Middle Fork complex. Yes.
Yeah, and just if you're tracking all the fires, so then the lava fire consumed the boulder fire, that's going to be a separate incident. I have a separate management team. So we have a team from Southwest area, Red Team is on that incident. And they're actually located over on the west side in Indian Valley is where their incident command post is going to be. But they'll have a presence over here in Cascade, up north in Cascade. And then I did want to just follow up. So after these incident management teams are done, they do that suppression repair work, right? There's still work to be done, and we bring in these burned area assessment teams that are going to take a look at how severe the fire burned. They'll look at soil impacts, right? And the intent there is that we need to take some immediate actions, right, to stabilize soils. bigger picture look at the landscape. And we'll do some seeding, right? There's a whole bunch of, we'll bring a whole interdisciplinary team together that's gonna look at that, and there's a whole lot of work that needs to be done over the course of the next year or two here on all these fires. Like I mentioned, there's 300,000 acres that have been impacted by fire in the Boise National Forest this summer, and it's a little different than a typical year where you get a big fire and it's all one fire maybe. This is scattered across 10 different fires in Boise. It's going to be a big effort for us. We're planning on putting 3 of those burned area assessment teams together. So one on the Wapiti, we'll have a dedicated one to the Middle Fork here, and then one over in the Wildfire. And those are, that's going to be a little while here, but we're already talking about that and planning for that.
Thank you. Any other questions? No one else? Okay, well, if you have any other questions, please feel free to come up to any of these people and ask questions directly. So that concludes our meeting. Our next meeting will be Monday, September 16th at 6 p.m. Thank you for coming and drive home safe.